What is going on, everybody? We are live on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. Welcome back to the Coach Steve Show. Make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribe button. Takes nothing to hit the like button, subscribe button on the YouTube channel. We are live. Follow it on the Facebook group. Follow me at Coach_Steve72. We are live. We're going to talk today about college football week 4. Talk about some certain games that happened. We will try to get through as much as possible, maybe not get through everything. You know, we have to have other episodes, other things to talk about. One new segment we're going to start having when we go live is call-ins. You have to be watching live as of right now to get the number to call in to have your thoughts and ideas for what we are talking about. But we're going to be talking about college football week 4, different games that have happened. Make sure you're giving it a rating on Apple and iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast, because it can be found anywhere, but it goes a long way to give a rating on iTunes. Also, check out the Belly Up Media Network at bellyupsports.com to check out blogs, podcasts, everything there. It's not all sports related. It's something is there for everybody. Sharing this out on social media right now. I apologize. We're getting this going. Again, we're live. So check out Belly Up Media Network at bellyupsports.com. A lot happened this week in college football, week 4. It's moving quite along. I guess it'd be week 5 if you count week 0. So make sure you're live to get the call-in number. I'll try to put it in the chat for people. If we get a call-in, if we don't, we don't. It is all good. And just to let people know, it is not my personal number. It will be a Google number. So I apologize if that bothers anybody, but that will be the number. We will put it in the chat. Hopefully it all works. We all know how technology works and how it goes. We will do the best that we can. Let's move right along. We're going to talk about college football week 4. We had a lot of big games happen, and we're going to discuss as much as humanly possible. We're going to check out the Clemson Tigers versus Wake Forest. This game took 2 overtimes for this game. Clemson walked away with the 51-45 win over Wake Forest. This game was a old-fashioned shootout. I don't know if they knew what defense was, but this was a high-scoring affair. DJU, the quarterback for Clemson, it's been talked about if he should continue to be the starting quarterback, if he should be benched, should it be time for a new quarterback to step in, and he came in and played very well against Wake Forest. He was 26 of 41, 371 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Didn't quite silence everybody, but made progress strides to show everybody how good he really is. Dabo Swinney said, if you don't think he's a good quarterback, then you are insane. It's hard to say that he's not a good quarterback, but the mistakes he made last year and then how he has started off the season, it's not out of the realm of possibility for people to talk about him, you know, not being the quarterback. But this was a great game to ball out in. An offense, Will Shipley, the running back for Clemson, had 104 yards on the ground. DJ added 52 yards on the ground himself. They spread the ball around to a bunch of different receivers, 84 yards, 72 yards, 60, 51, 41, 36 yards. On Wake Forest side, Sam Hartman played just as well as DJ did. He was 20 of 29, 337 yards. He averaged 11.6 yards per completion with 6 touchdown passes. On the ground, they only had 110 yards rushing on the ground. Jamal Banks, the receiver for Wake Forest, had 141 yards receiving with another 53, 51, 31, 22-yard receiving for Wake Forest. So they also balled out. So this, and it took overtime. As you can see, Clemson scores 14, 6, 8, 10, and 7. and then 6 in overtime, 7 in the first, 6 in the second overtime. Wake Forest scores 7, 7, then 21 in the third, 3 in the fourth, 7 in the first overtime, and none in the last. What I take away from this game is that both these teams have high, incredible offenses. We knew Wake Forest had an incredible offense from last year, and bringing back all their offensive weapons this year, we all knew that they would come back with a high-powered offense. We knew that the question marks for Clemson, there's 2 question marks. One, how is the offense going to work with Coach Elliott moving on to Virginia and having to have a new offense, put in a new offensive line coach, and trying to get DJ, to play better as quarterback. And, those were question marks. And we're seeing right now in this game that they were starting to figure out the offense, the quarterback figuring out how to play. But another question mark is with Coach Brent Venables going on from a defensive coordinator on to be the head coach of Oklahoma. What's Clemson's defense going to look like? And it's been fine up until this game. A defense to give up 45 points does not put you in a good spot. But it's a tale of, it's a double-edged sword here where is it Wake Forest offense, is that good, or is it Clemson's defense not good? That's kind of where we're sitting at right now. And the question then becomes, is it their defense? And we'll see what that becomes when we get there as the season goes along with their defense. But their offense is going to slowly start to pick it up. I don't think there was ever a question in that as it progresses, even though they claim DJ's not playing that well. Because if you look at how much they've scored, they score 41, 35, 48. Now their schedule, this was the first test. So the offense, I think, is going to slowly progress and be fine. The offensive line would be their struggle points. Their big game will be next week versus NC State. And then it will just roll on. Later on, Florida State's now ranked. Syracuse is surprising a lot of people. Notre Dame's going to be Notre Dame. So they are going to have some games. The ACC has some tougher teams this year than they have in the past. So it's going to be curious to see how this defense if it can hold up without Brent Venables calling the defense, and see what kind of defense players they have. Now, people are going to say that their defense is bad. I don't know if we can necessarily say that yet, but Wake Forest is having a dynamic offense. But this was a fun game for fans of today's game because we love to see points scored. So Clemson gets the 51-45 win. Wake Forest is now 3-1 as Clemson sits 4-0. One of the big games now talked about was not talked about beforehand, before this game, was Middle Tennessee versus Miami. This was not a game on people's radar unless you are a fan of these two teams where you're going to sit there and watch them, even though we all kind of knew, and this is no offense to Middle Tennessee, things get looked at by principle. So on principle, everybody is thinking this game should go to Miami. That's what everybody in the world and their grandma is thinking. That's exactly what everybody's thinking. And this is no offense to Middle Tennessee. This is no offense to any of them. This was a big upset. Middle Tennessee got the 45-31 win. And I think everybody at the same exact moment when they saw it was 24-10 at one point says, wow, how is this possible? How in the world is this humanly possible? Especially after Miami played well against Texas A&M. Well, not well, but it was a closer game. You're playing an SEC school. The people are wondering, how is this humanly possible? I have no factual evidence on this. So I'm going to go by what I hear and what's being told. You have to go by all those type of things. What I'm going to go off with is this transfer portal thing is going to be good and bad. The good is they can get older players to come to your school. I think that is a part of it when you're starting to see these schools, non-Power 5, everything like that, where they are competing with these other schools. And I think you really are starting to see coaching start to really make an impact once again. It's always been that way. But I think you're going to start seeing it a little more than you have in past. But I personally think that's what it is for me. But I also think it's just, you know what? Kids are tired. They just want to play. They're going to play as hard as they can. And it shows where Mario Cristobal has his work cut out for him, because I know they're updating facilities at Miami. I know that he's dealing with these recruits that weren't his, but they've attacked the transfer portal. They've, dealt with NAIL. They're paying players to be there, which is legal. This is not me saying, oh, they're paying players. No, the school's not paying players. The players are finding NIL deals down in Miami. This is not Mario Cristobal, like, here's this check, you get money, you get money, you get money. It's the schools or the players finding places in Miami because it's Miami. The Middle Tennessee just played way better than Miami, where it just comes down to. That's what it comes down to. Middle Tennessee had 507 total yards, 408 through the air. Miami only had 367 total yards. They had 307 through the air, 60 on the ground. Middle Tennessee had 99. Miami turned the ball over 3 times. They threw 2 interceptions and fumbled it. Miami's defense is struggling. They're struggling to make tackles. They're struggling to stop the pass. They're doing okay in the run game, 99 yards. That's okay. And again, it's hard to look at stats saying giving up all these yards, defenses, they're not okay giving up all these yards, but if they give up yards and not the points, they live with it. They're done. So you're seeing the defense struggle for Miami. They struggle with Texas A&M to try to stop them. Then you're seeing there's a quarterback controversy going on in Miami. Tyler Van Dyke was 16 of 32, 138 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Then they bring in Jake Garcia with 10 of 19, 169 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So now you have quarterbacks that are struggling, and now they have to figure out who they're going to start. Are they going to start someone different? They have to slowly start to figure out where they want to go in the quarterback direction. Chase Cunningham, the quarterback from Middle Tennessee, played great, 16 of 25, 408 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. They only had a 74-yard rusher, but if you can pass for 408 yards, who needs to run the football? DJ Engelman, receiver, had 2 receptions for 169 yards. Think of that. 2 receptions, 169 yards receiving. I don't even know if that's possible. I don't even know if that's the right one. But according to the stat line, that's what it is. That's insane to me to have these big plays. So Miami's defense is giving up big plays. They're getting big chunks of yards. They have a quarterback battle going on. They didn't have a run game. The U is not back. Mario Cristobal needs time. This is not a time for Miami fans to start hitting the panic button. He will figure it out. But at the end of the day, they're not back. They're going to struggle throughout the year if they have a quarterback battle, if they have a defense that can't stop people and stop big plays and make the plays when they need to. So they're going to struggle, but Middle Tennessee gets the upset 45-31 win over Miami. Notre Dame went on to play North Carolina Tar Heels. Both North Carolina came into the game 3-0. Notre Dame came in at 2-1. They came in at 1-2. I apologize. They only beat their team last week. Notre Dame's offense has been struggling. The defense, I think, has played fine. People want to blame a lot of things on the defense, but when you watch the defense play, they have been fine. North Carolina's proven they can score points, but their defense is also struggling. So for Notre Dame to get some confidence and get back on the right path with their offense, this would be the game to do it. And that's exactly what happened. North Carolina's defense gave up 24 points in the second quarter to Notre Dame, then 14 in the third and 17 in the fourth. Notre Dame won 45-32. North Carolina had a chance at the end. Just couldn't convert on certain downs. And Notre Dame's defense, they gave up 32 points, but North Carolina has a good offense. They have a good offensive coordinator. They can score points. You've already seen it. It's their defense. So Notre Dame to give up 32 points, but if your offense is scoring 45, you're fine. So Notre Dame's offense is starting to play a little bit better. And I'm not saying they're an elite offense. I'm not saying that they're going to, turn around and score 45 points each and every week. But what I am saying is, I've said it on this podcast, I'm probably one of the only people that talks about this, is confidence. When you get confident, it doesn't matter what you do. When there's confidence and you get on a roll and you get in a groove, it doesn't matter. Drew Pine played a lot better this week after getting his butt chewed out on national television that everybody's seen. 24-34, 289 yards, 8.5 yards per completion, and 3 touchdowns, played a lot better. Notre Dame's offensive line in the run game, still there. Estiming, I always say his name wrong. 17 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Chris Tyree had 15 carries for 80 yards. Logan Diggs, 10 carries for 50 yards. Drew Pine chipped in for 20 yards on the ground as well. Receiving, Michael Meyer had 88 yards receiving. Lorenzo Styles had 69 yards. Logan Diggs also chipped in with 65 yards receiving. So they spread the ball around. They had the run game going. Drew Pine played a lot better. So when that happens for Notre Dame, they've always played well. Whenever they have decent quarterback play and can run the ball, they win games. And that's exactly what they needed to see. North Carolina's really got to go home and figure out their defense. Their offense is there. It's going to be fine. They want to score more than 32 points. Drake Main for them was 301 yards through the air. He had 5 touchdown passes, so Notre Dame's going to really address that. But North Carolina, again, they can score. We already know that. This is not a shocking thing for everybody that they scored 32 points. It's their defense. Their defense is not playing well. They're giving up big chunk plays. They're not tackling well. And so they really have to go figure that out. But Notre Dame is getting back on track, 45-32 win over North Carolina. And so I'll be curious to see how next week Notre Dame will have a test versus BYU. And then they have a slate of games where they can really get back on track with Stanford struggling and UNLV. And then if they have a confident Syracuse, that's a game circled on October 29th versus Syracuse. And their big test comes against Clemson. Then they finish out with Navy, Boston College, and USC. So Notre Dame's playoff hopes are probably, pretty much dashed at this point. But to get some confidence coming in for next year for recruits and Marcus Freeman, I think they're going to be fine, especially when their offense is starting to figure it out. This will be a short one. Wisconsin played Ohio State in primetime Saturday night, and I do not like Ohio State, so I'm sitting there hoping that Wisconsin comes in and just beats up Ohio State. It was the other way around. Wisconsin literally gets whipped. They get whipped in the horseshoe. Ohio State came out in their black uniforms, black helmets, and I hate Ohio State, but it looks awesome. Literally whipped. Ohio State gets the win 52-21 over Wisconsin. Ohio State scores 21 in the first, 10 in the second, 14 in the third, and 7 in the fourth. Wisconsin doesn't score until the second quarter, and then they don't score again until the fourth quarter, and they get 14 points. Ohio State just looked faster. They looked more physical up front on defense. Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, is really making his mark so far with his time with Ohio State. Ohio State is 4-0. Wisconsin is now 2-2, and they go off to play Illinois next week, and that will be a battle against Wisconsin's struggling offense versus Illinois' better defense than they've played in the past. CJ Stroud for Ohio State was 17 of 27, 281 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Did have an interception, but 5 touchdowns outweighs the 1 interception. Mertz for Wisconsin was 11 of 20, 94 yards, 1 touchdown and interception. Rushing yards, Allen for Wisconsin had 23 carries, 165 yards. Henderson for Ohio State had 21 carries for 121 yards. And so, Wisconsin just gets whipped. The question now is, does Wisconsin need a head coaching change? They need an offensive change. And my opinion on this is Wisconsin has been totally fine, even since the Brent Bielema era, to get under center, I formation, run your GT, run your power, run dive, really run at you. But they've always had a complement short passing game, which led to a longer passing game. Mertz started off hot in his career versus my Illinois Fighting Illini. I think he was 22 of 23 or 21 of 22 or something like that versus Illinois. And then he's had moments, but ever since then, he has not been that complement passer to the run game. And so people are talking about Wisconsin needs to adapt to the times and they have to go more passing attack instead of this run game. I necessarily don't know about that. I think they need to get back to recruiting, getting the big line, the fullback, the big running back. When they have those mixtures, they do very, very, very well. But when they don't have those, they struggle a little bit. When they heavily rely on passing, it doesn't always work out. Do they need to adapt and tweak some things? I think so. And what I mean by that is they got to figure out what they can do now. If they aren't a team that is going to be ground and pound the entire game and have short passes, then they need to figure it out. Do we need to go shotgun more and run the ball that way? Do we need to be in a pistol? Do we do just short little passing games, help Mertz get some confidence, not run, pass, and look like a Chicago Bears when Matt Nagy was there? I don't know if that's quite the direction you want to go, because I think Wisconsin's always going to be Wisconsin, that they have built there where they're going to be I formation and run the ball at you, pull three guys sometimes, and just run the ball down your throat. So I'm not saying they need to make a whole change and then, this week versus Illinois, they go air raid by any stretch of the imagination. But there is some concern when you're supposed to be way more physical than Ohio State, who Ohio State is physical, but you are supposed to be the more physical team. And Ohio State just looked bigger, faster, and stronger, ran around Wisconsin, tackled better, and Wisconsin just did not run the ball very well and did not do the things that they normally do to win. So hopefully they don't figure it out next week when they play Illinois, when they host Illinois, and Brent Bielema goes home, kind of, to coach against Wisconsin. But we'll talk about that later on in the week for a preview. But Ohio State gets the big-time win versus them. So Wisconsin's going to have to turn around and figure it out. And Ohio State is on their mission to get to the Big Ten championship and get to the college football playoff. They are 4-0. Oh, boy. We are going to talk about Miami of Ohio getting the upset over the Northwestern Wildcats. They get the win 17-14. Northwestern is now 1-3. They are 0-3 at home. Miami of Ohio is now 2-2. I came in the beginning of the year after getting to see Northwestern's practice up close. I was literally standing on the sideline watching them practice. How hard they practiced, how physical they were, how physical the run game was, how physical the players were. Their offensive line is big and muscle and can move people. And I said they're going to be a physical team. They still are a physical team. That's not being taken away. They're just not putting things together. Again, one of the highlights of my coaching life is to meet Coach Fitzgerald in person. I got to meet him face to face, which was an awesome thing. They are just not putting everything together. And, one game, their defense might be playing well, but the offense isn't putting together. Maybe their offense is being put together and their defense isn't good put together. I'm really sure Coach Fitzgerald's job is not in jeopardy. He is a Northwestern guy. He is Northwestern through and through. The times he has had to leave to the NFL, to leave to another, maybe a bigger program than Northwestern, he has never done it. He loves where he is. He loves Northwestern. I think he loves Illinois. He loves being around the city of Chicago. You get a cool look at the skyline from their practice facility, which is top notch. I just think that he and that team are going to have some soul searching to do. And I think that's what we're going to take this week. I guarantee they're having some soul searching. They're going to change some things up and try to get back. But right now they are rolling downhill instead of going up the hill right now. If somebody's going to figure it out, it's going to be Coach Fitzgerald to get that physicality back and to put a complete game together. But you cannot take anything away whatsoever from Miami of Ohio to get that win at all. Because on principle, you're saying Northwestern gets the win. But This is a Division I program in Miami of Ohio. They have a good defensive coordinator. They've always had a good offensive coordinator to get it done. But Miami of Ohio's defense really stepped up, and their run game really kept them in this game. Miami of Ohio, their quarterbacks, Avion Smith only had 62 yards passing on the ground. Keon Mosey had 21 carries for 171 yards. So that run game really helped keep them in the game. When you look at time of possession, Miami really wanted to keep Northwestern's offense on the side. They got the ball for 32 minutes and 11 seconds. Northwestern just had was 7 of 17 on third down. They had 6 penalties for 62 yards. They did turn the ball over twice. They fumbled it. So when Miami's trying to keep your offense on the side and you're fumbling it and giving it back to them, that does not help. Passing, Northwestern had 250 yards through the air, 107 on the ground, with Miami of Ohio having 216 total rush yards. So Northwestern just has to figure out how to get points on the board. You're getting the yards, 364 total yards for Northwestern, but you've got to figure out how to make these into points. You have to have guys start to step up and figure out how you're going to score points because you are on a time clock right now, being 1-3. Having to go to Penn State next week, then you host Wisconsin, go to Maryland, go to Iowa, then you host Ohio State, go to Minnesota, go to Purdue, and host Illinois. Like, it does not get any easier for them. And to have Miami of Ohio have the ice in their veins to march down the field and win on a late field goal. Again, Northwestern's defense, if you're looking at it going, well, we held them to this many points. Yes, but again, they're just not putting a complete game together. So Miami of Ohio gets that 17-14 upset. Congratulations to them. Coach Fitzgerald and Northwestern is going to have some soul searching that they're going to have to do, and they will figure it out. But this is a heartbreaking loss to give up the late field goal. But Miami of Ohio gets the upset win, give them confidence heading into their MAC action later on in the year. What in the world is going on with Michigan State, who at one point last year was in the college football playoff? They were the 4th seed, I believe, at one point in the college football playoff. They paid Mel Tucker a lot of money to coach. He is a good coach. There's nothing being taken away from him being a good coach. But something is going on with Michigan State. They played Minnesota, who people are high on this year, and I was indifferent about Minnesota because they always go up and down, up and down. Minnesota just whips Michigan State. Michigan State didn't score until the 4th quarter. Minnesota wins 34-7, making Michigan State 2-2, 0-1 in Big Ten play. Minnesota is now 4-0. Minnesota by quarters 14-3, 7, and 10. Who would have thought that the way Michigan State ran the ball, how physical they were last year, coming into this year, paying Mel Tucker all the money, the staff that they've developed or gotten there, we'd be sitting here saying that they're 2-2 right now, especially with the schedule that they've had. They've beat Western Michigan, cool. They beat Akron, cool. Washington was a tough football team, but you lose to them. Now you lose to Minnesota. And it does not get any easier for Michigan State. Maryland, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Rutgers, Indiana, Penn State. Like, it's not getting better, and that's why sometimes when you first take over a program, sometimes you don't want to do the best of the best because then that's always the expectation. But when you do it, and the next year this happens, it seems way worse than what we are all making in the podcast world. But this is exactly what is going on. And the question now becomes, is Minnesota back? Their quarterback, Tanner Morgan, was 23 of 26 for 268 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Mohammed Ibrahim, I'm going to say his name wrong. I apologize. 22 carries, a lot of carries, but 103 yards. Trey Potts, 13 carries for 72 yards. So when you're getting the rush game going, that's all you could do. And it seems there's some going on with the quarterbacks. Peyton Thorne is starting to struggle. 17 of 24, only 132 yards to 2 interceptions. And then they brought Noah Kim in later on, 6 of 7 for 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter for 70 yards. They have literally no rush game. They only have 38 yards on the ground, and that is not Michigan State football. So the running back are not doing well. The offensive line is struggling. Minnesota can spread the ball around to the receivers. They can run the ball. Overall, the defense, Michigan State's defense, is struggling, giving up 508 yards to Minnesota. So right now in Michigan State land, your offense is struggling. You can't stay on the field. You only had the ball for 17 minutes. Minnesota had the ball for 42 minutes and 30 seconds. That's a problem. You turn the ball over 3 times if you're Michigan State. You fumbled in through 2 interceptions. So right now, you also, just as long as Northwestern, have to do some soul searching and figure out why can you not run the football. You have to figure out the quarterback problem in order to score more points, and as you're getting into Big Ten play. If you lost this game 34-31, a little different because you're scoring points, maybe the quarterback's playing better, you're running the ball. But when you literally can't do anything against Minnesota, who is always up and down, I'm not saying Minnesota's bad this year. I'm not saying that at all. But you were Michigan State, who last year was very physical on defense. You ran the ball very well. Reminds me of a Minnesota or a Wisconsin team, but they can pass the ball. They can go in shotgun. They always don't have to be under center. So Michigan State has some soul searching that they do need to do. But to figure out what's going on in their world. But that's a big time loss for them, 34-7. They have some soul searching to do, but it gives the rest of the Big Ten confidence for the rest of the Big Ten. Putting in the chat the number everybody wants to call in. There's some people watching. You may not call in, and that's fine. We're going to try it out. But technology, we always know how it works. But Minnesota gets the 34-7 win over Michigan State. Michigan State is now also rolling down the opposite hill. In the Big Ten and overall, they are now 2-2. Wisconsin or Minnesota is now 4-0. We will see also how Minnesota fares in the rest of their season with their schedule as well. With Purdue, Illinois, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Northwestern, Iowa, and Wisconsin. We will see how that all happens with them, but they get the 34-7 win over Michigan State. Michigan survives the upset. Maryland almost had Michigan. Michigan escapes 34-27. Maryland, with Coach Loxley at the helm, was going to be a good football team. I think we all can agree that with what he's learned, with his experiences, they were going to be a good football team. The question marks coming in this year for Michigan was, what is their offense going to look like? How do you replace certain defensive guys that they've lost, some to the NFL, some to just graduation. So how do you replace them? Getting the win 34-27 makes Michigan 4-0, Maryland 3-1 now. Michigan just didn't capitalize on certain plays that they needed to on offense, and they allowed Maryland to make plays. So their defense was a little suspect. And the question is, who's going to be calling offense for Michigan? Is it Jim Harbaugh? Is it, someone else who's really going to be calling the plays? But they survived. And so we can't take anything away from Michigan for surviving this game. We can't take anything away. It's the Big Ten. Things can be crazy. You never know what's going to happen. But they get the win. Tua Tagovailoa, I can never say his name. He was 207 yards passing, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. He's always up and down. He's either on fire or he struggles. They also had Billy Edwards Jr. play quarterback. He had 1 touchdown to 62 yards. So Tua Tua's brother struggling is going to be some talked about, where he maybe isn't always getting the job done. It's been that way his whole career. Um, because their schedule also hasn't been like the quote unquote best, but it gives them confidence. They beat Buffalo, they beat Charlotte, and they beat a good SMU. SMU is always good. But when he struggles, he struggles. When he's good, he's good. When he struggles, it's bad. JJ McCarthy from Michigan, 220 yards passing to 2 touchdowns, 18 of 26. Rushing the ball, Blake Corum, 30 carries for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is amazing to have a running back go for 243 yards, especially in the Big Ten versus another Big Ten school. It just seemed that Michigan's defense was just allowing Maryland to hold on to the ball and get certain Russian plays and, just to stay in the game. But Michigan, at the end of the day, did what they needed to do at the end, played better than Maryland. Maryland turned the ball over 3 times. So without those turnovers, maybe we're sitting here having a different conversation about Maryland. They both scored 10 in the first quarter. Then Michigan scores 7 in the second, none in the third. Maryland scores 3 in the second, none in the third as well. Then they score 14 in the fourth, then allowed Michigan to score 17 in the fourth, which was the game changer there. So Maryland's defense didn't do enough to stop the run game. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't get pressure up front. And so Michigan holds on from that quote-unquote upset that would have happened, 34-27. And we'll see how Michigan goes. As of right now, it does not look like they will go undefeated if they play that way again. I don't even know if they're going to beat Ohio State, but we'll get to that bridge when we get to it later on in November. But they went 34-27. Moving on in our college football week 4, if you are watching, the phone number is now in the chat. You have to be here to get that right now until I decide to do anything else. If you want to call in to talk about college football. Don't talk about NFL. I know I'm in my Bears jersey, but do not talk about NFL. That will be later on in the week, because there's going to be some thoughts on the Chicago Bears. Moving on, Kansas State gets the quote-unquote upset versus Oklahoma, and we'll talk about why I say quote-unquote upset. But they beat Oklahoma again without Lincoln Riley there, 41-34. Now, the reason why it's called a upset is because Oklahoma was ranked way, way, way higher than Kansas State. But the reason why I say quote-unquote upset, that's why. But Kansas State has always had Oklahoma's number. One of the teams that makes sure that Oklahoma never goes undefeated sometimes, it's not always Kansas State, but normally when it happens, it is Kansas State. Kansas State has had the formula for beating Oklahoma before, so it wasn't going to change this year. This was one of those talked about where I said this could be a win. This could definitely be a win on Kansas State's schedule. So it's not necessarily a Lincoln Riley thing, a Brent Venables thing. It's just a Kansas State versus Oklahoma thing. Kansas State has been more physical than Oklahoma. They'll run the ball right at them. They'll do what they need to do on defensive tackle and keep everything in front of them. Don't allow the huge explosive plays. Kansas State scores 14 in the first, 10 in the second, 3 in the third, 14 in the fourth. Oklahoma scores 7 in the first, 10 in the second, 3 in the third, 14 in the fourth. So that big other touchdown that Kansas State got in their first quarter really separated them to help win this game. But I'm not shocked at all if you look at the history of this, especially when I said this at the beginning, talking about the Big 12. If you go back and listen to the Big 12 preview I did, when you get Adrian Martinez, who I believe it was 2 or 3 times he was voted captain for Nebraska, that has never happened in the history of the Nebraska football program. I'm not saying he's an all-star stud of a quarterback, but watching him play at Nebraska for a few years, watching the Big Ten as I have, it was proven to me then that he can do a lot of good things. He can make good passes. He can run the football. And so putting him on Kansas State, who is a more physical team than Nebraska, which I don't know if you would ever say that from Nebraska teams way back in the day, But adding him to that can allow a team like that to go beat Oklahoma. He was 21 of 34, 234 yards and a touchdown, but on the ground, he ran for 148 yards. So when you have a quarterback that can do all that, it's hard on a defense, even a Brent Venables defense, to come in and control that, especially when you have another running back, Deuce Vaughn, chipping in 25 carries for 116 yards on the ground as well. So Oklahoma had no answer to control Adrian Martinez through the air, and they could not stop the run game because they had 275 yards rushing, and that was just from two guys. DJ Giddens had 13 yards rushing, but really, when those two guys are the ones running the football on you as a defense, it puts pressure on you. Do we stop the pass? Do we stop the run? The quarterback's running. So that combination with a team that can run the ball like Kansas State for forever, it's tough on Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma had some good stuff too on offense. Dylan Gabriel, their quarterback, had 330 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, 26 of 39. Eric Gray on the ground had 114 yards rushing. Their quarterback also chipped in for 61 yards. So it's not necessarily Oklahoma's offense. It's when you're facing an offense like Kansas State. Now, is every single week you're going to face a mobile quarterback like that can do those things? No, not really. But that is going to be a formula to go against Oklahoma, and Kansas State prove that. And especially when you go against a Kansas State who is also tough on defense, that will come up and hit you, tackle you, push your receivers off, everything like that. They will do all that to you. It's going to be tough sledding for Oklahoma. Oklahoma did not convert as well on third down. They were 4 of 13. They were 1 for 2 on fourth down. Kansas State was 8 of 17 on third down, 2 of 2 for fourth down. I mean, Oklahoma had 550 yards. I mean, what more do you want from their offense? But their defense does have to step up. Penalties hurt Oklahoma. They had 11 penalties for 87 yards. Nobody turned the ball over. Kansas State was able to keep away from Oklahoma longer, 35 minutes to 24 minutes. So I was not incredibly shocked whatsoever that Kansas State did get this win at all over them. A lot of people were, but it is an upset, but I'm not incredibly shocked. So Kansas State gets the 41-34 win. The Big 12 is starting to look interesting because upsets, Texas had that heartbreaking loss to Alabama, and now they have another heartbreaking loss, losing to Texas A&M in overtime, 37-34. Texas had 17 in the first, 14 in the second, 7 in the third, 3 in the fourth, none in overtime. Texas Tech 7, 10, and 10, scoring, and then 3 in overtime to win the game. This is a huge loss for Texas Longhorn Nation. This hurts Coach Sarkisian. It hurts the whole program because they were a few plays away from taking down Alabama and Nick Saban. And so then you think maybe they can go on and they'll probably lose another game in the Big 12, but you're thinking Big 12 championship, you're thinking some other team. You weren't thinking of Texas Tech. I know Texas Tech is 3-1, but they really weren't on anybody's radar coming in because they played Murray State. Now, beating Houston was a big time thing, but you lose to NC State. Fine, but that's a good team. But they really weren't on anybody's radar yet because we needed to see more of them. But to hold on, to play tough against Texas is huge. That's why rivalry games always get thrown out the window because you never know what's going to happen. Things get taken to another level. Texas Tech could have been 0-3 coming in, and this still could have happened because you just throw everything out the window when it comes to rivalry games. The toughness of Texas Tech really stuck out in this game. Hudson Card, the quarterback for Texas, was 20 of 30, 277 yards and 2 touchdowns to an interception. On the ground, Robinson for Texas had 101 yards rushing. For Texas Tech, their quarterback balled out. Donovan Smith, 331 yards, 56 pass attempts, completed 38 of them, 2 touchdown passes. Just spread the ball all over the place, tons of receivers with lots of catches. Miles Price had the most, 13 receptions for 98 yards. It was just chipping away at Texas. It was matching them physicality for physicality. Texas turning the ball over gave Texas Tech life for an interception and a fumble. Texas Tech taking their time. They had the ball for 35 minutes. Converting on third down or on fourth down. They went for a lot of fourth downs. and that's what kept them in the game. So Texas not be able to stop Texas Tech on fourth down. Texas Tech was 6 of 8 on fourth down. That's a lot. They were 7 of 20 on third down. So you're looking at this going, Texas should have won. But Texas Tech just being physical, they kept on believing. Don't stop believing in the Texas Tech Raiders, and they found a way to get it done. People are going to say Sarkisian's seat is hot. I don't think so yet. You have Archie Manning coming in later on in life, and that could help you figure this out. But this is going to set them back. This sets them back. Texas Tech 37-34 win over Texas. Let's move on to the other Texas team, Texas A&M. They played a neutral site game in Dallas, whatever, versus Arkansas. Arkansas coming in at 3-0 versus Texas A&M. And Texas A&M had their struggles at the beginning of the game with Jimbo Fisher still calling plays, looking like a guy filing through taxes, looking like a guy looking for the warranty. He looked like a teacher trying to figure out the files and the grades and everything, a principal, everything else. Trying to figure all that out. Arkansas jumped out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, and then Texas A&M started to come back. There was a play with an interception. It was an interception or a fumble, and when Texas A&M's guy was getting tackled, he gave it to the guy behind him, and they ran off for a touchdown, and that really sparked Texas A&M. And then Arkansas fought back, marched down the field, lined up for a field goal, and their field goal kicker kicked the ball, and it hit the very top of the upright on the right side. And so Arkansas fans, coming from a Bears fan, I feel your pain. I know what a doink feels like to win the game and know what it feels like. So any Arkansas fan, any Arkansas coaches that want to talk about it, I will talk about it with you, because that is a heartbreaking thing to have to go through. Arkansas loses 20 to Texas A&M. Texas A&M gets the win 23-21, which is heartbreaking, because you look at, I thought Arkansas's quarterback KJ Jefferson played well, because he did everything. He was 12 of 19 through the air, 171 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He averaged 9 yards of completion, but he also had 105 yards on the ground off of 18 carries and a rushing touchdown as well. So he had all of the scores. He rushed for 2 of them, threw for 2, ran for 1. So I thought he played extremely well to try to help Arkansas get this win. Their offense stalled. They didn't, convert on, third downs. They just kind of stalled a little bit. Texas A&M's defense stepped up. Their offense was really, I guess you call it okay, because they scored 13 and then 10, really does help out. Their quarterback, Max Johnson, was 151 yards through the air, 11 of 21, 11 for 21, and 1 touchdown. Their running back, Davion, had 19 carries, 159 yards on the ground. So Arkansas just gave up too many yards on the ground. They just, again, didn't finish. They had the stats to say they won. They just didn't finish. They were 6 of 15 on third down, so they needed to convert more. The fumble cost them, and then they scored off of that, where they pitched it back and scored ooff of that. And then having the doink of the field goal. So just a complete overall team thing that didn't finish, which, Coach Pittman, that's it. He's a coach that will get them there to finish. Arkansas is not going anywhere. They're going to be so competitive throughout the rest of the year. But Texas A&M sitting there at 3-1. They're not overly impressive. They're not doing things that you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, they're Georgia, they're Alabama. I know they beat Alabama last year, but right now they're not doing anything over the top with the players that they have and, the offensive guru-ness that's there. But they got the win 23-21 nonetheless. You feel for Arkansas fans with the doink, with KJ Jefferson doing everything he possibly could, leaving all on the field. They were heartbroken at the end of the game. They left it all on the field. Texas A&M just ended up making a few more plays than Arkansas. So Texas A&M does get that win 23-21. Moving on, there was a big-time game in Tennessee as they hosted the Florida Gators and Coach Napier. This was a fun game to watch. If you love offense, you like this game, you like quarterback throwing for lots of yards. This was the game for you. Hard-fought battle there in Tennessee. Tennessee does end up getting the win 38-33 over Florida, making Tennessee 4-0. Florida Gators are now 2-2. Anthony Richardson for Florida, after the criticism I gave, because I think they need to stick to a quarterback or he needs to figure something out, he balled out. Passed the ball a lot. 24 of 44, 453 yards. He averaged 10.3 yards per completion, 2 touchdown passes to an interception. He also gave in 62 yards running on the ground. He was their leading rusher. Nobody else there gave anything for rushing yards. Passing the ball over the place. Justin Shorter had 155 yards receiving. Ricky Pershaw had 103 yards receiving. So Tennessee's defense just gave up a lot of big-time passes that they normally don't want to. Nobody wants to give it up on defense. They just allowed Rich Jefferson. It's hard to sit here what I'm about to say and actually do this. When you're going up against a running quarterback like that, you want to make sure he is maintained in the pocket, and that's way easier said than done because you have to make the decision on how you're going to contain him. Do you leave a spy? And when you leave a spy, that leaves one less guy in coverage, especially on third and longs where you want pass protections on that or pass defense. So you have to figure out how you're going to contain a guy, and it's way easier said than done. But when he got outside the pocket, he made completions. He was able to run, so he played a lot better. But didn't play. But the team itself didn't do enough to win the game because Tennessee's offense is fun to watch. Hendon Hooker, their quarterback, was 22 of 28, 349 yards. He averaged 12.5 yards per pass, 2 touchdowns. He also chimed in with 112 yards on the ground. He was the leading rusher. Jabari Small had 90 yards rushing for Tennessee with a rushing touchdown. Jalen Wright had 25 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown. Brew McCoy, the receiver for them, had 5 receptions for 102 yards. He averaged 20.4 yards a catch, so he had big-time plays. Tennessee did fumble it twice. Florida also had a few turnovers themselves. But overall, this was a overall fun game to watch. 2 turnovers per team. Florida had the ball longer than Tennessee. Tennessee runs that fast up-tempo offense. But Florida had 10 penalties to 6 penalties to Tennessee. Tennessee's offense is fun to watch, and that was the big takeaway, that Florida's offense or defense could not stop Tennessee's offense. Hooker, their quarterback, is probably going to be a Heisman candidate if he continues to play like this. I also think Chase Brown for Illinois should be one, but we'll get to that when we talk about Illinois later on in the week. This was, again, if you like quarterbacks, you like passing yards, you like points scored, this was a really fun game to watch. Richardson showed the athleticism of him and how he can play the quarterback position, shut people like me up talking about this. And it was nice to see just one quarterback play for Florida. When you have just one coming in, good things can happen. That was their downfall, I think, last year. Tennessee proved that on offense they are very efficient, and when they're up-tempo, they have great formations. They have fun things to watch. When they run the ball, pass the ball, it's just all fun things to watch. So watch out for Tennessee and the SEC. They're going to be very competitive. Coach Lightpool is doing a great job in year 2. Coach Napier is trying to build a culture there. We all knew they had athletes last year, but it was the coaching and how they can maintain athletes and a culture. So he's going to get that part done. So I wouldn't sleep on Florida either. Tennessee is just a year ahead of them. So 38-33 win for Tennessee. To talk about Auburn again. We always talk about Auburn. They ended up playing Missouri, and Auburn got lucky in this game. And what I mean by lucky is they played hard enough to win, but also, well, we'll talk about it. Auburn literally escaped with an overtime win, 17-14 versus Missouri. Tennessee coming off that loss to Penn State, where everybody in the world is talking about that they're done. Like, it needs to be over. Brian Harsin's a terrible coach, and they're not giving him a chance. We already talked about it. But now they get the win versus Missouri. But it was a bad win because you're Auburn. They looked good at the beginning. Now it's Missouri. Nothing to bat an eyelash at. Good coach there. They're trying to figure it out, but nothing to bat an eyelash. But Auburn got 14 points in the first quarter. So you're thinking 14 points in the first quarter. They should score 7-3 every single quarter from here on out. If their defense can hold them to 3 to 7 points too, we're going to win the game. Well, Auburn scores 14 in the first. Then Missouri scores 14 of their own points in the second. And then nobody scores the rest of the game. Defense did what they needed to do on both sides of the ball. But both sides are struggling on offense just in general. So to score none. Well, then in overtime, Auburn gets held and they kick a field goal, so they get the 3 points. Then Missouri runs the football, running back's running, tries to get the football out, fumbles it before it crosses the plane, and Missouri loses the game. So Auburn is literally that little fumble away from losing this game and being 2-2, and Missouri being 3-1, and Brian Harsin maybe could have been fired at that moment. The way last week went, the way that would have ended, would have been fired. And that's not fair to him, but that's probably what would have happened. But Auburn gets lucky. This was just an ugly game. And I know, the defenses are so good. Maybe. I just think both offenses struggle. 14 of 13 on third down for Missouri, 3 of 13 third down for Auburn. Auburn only had 217 yards of offense. Missouri had 312. Auburn had 135 through the air and 82 on the ground. Missouri had 179 through the air, 133 on the ground. They had more penalties than Auburn, 7 penalties for 45 yards. They did turn the ball over twice, so that really hurt Missouri. Without those turnovers, probably doesn't even make it to overtime. Auburn had to play now Robbie Ashford at quarterback, 12 of 18, 127, no passing touchdowns. Brady Cook for the Missouri Tigers, 14 of 24, 179 yards, did have the interception. Nathaniel Pete, the running back for Missouri, 20 carries for 110 yards on the ground. Missouri's leading rusher was their quarterback for 46 yards. So I think both offenses were just not very good. Give credit to their defenses, but I also think these offenses are the best. Auburn literally escapes 17-14. They got really, really lucky winning this game. So they get that win 17-14. Just had to bring that up because of how they won. Sad for Missouri because they deserved to win that game at the end, but they weren't able to get it done. So they got that win. That wraps up this episode of the Coach Steve Show podcast for College Football Week 4. Be on the lookout for trying to do some call-ins. None happened today, so that's a little embarrassing, but we will move on from that. We'll, maybe start advertising that to try to go live. It's hard to go live with my schedule, but it is what it is. So we'll try, just know if you're listening to this, we'll try to do some call-ins, or, if we're not necessarily live and I'm recording, put the number out there, people can call in. We'll try all that out. But thank you guys for watching and or listening. Like and subscribe. Follow at Coach_Steve72 on Twitter. Follow and give it a rating on Apple and iTunes. Goes a long way. This is Coach Steve, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Mm-hmm.